You wake up in a country sitting on the largest oil reserves on Earth. Gas should be cheap. Food should be everywhere. Money should feel stable. Instead, you need a backpack full of cash just to buy bread. This is not fiction. This is Venezuela. And the strange part is, it didn't collapse because it ran out of oil. It collapsed because oil stopped behaving the way everyone expected. For years, Venezuela looked like the perfect economic cheat code. Oil money flowed in. A lot of it. At one point, oil made up almost 2/3 of the government's income. Think about that. Imagine your entire life, your salary, your rent, your future, depending on one single thing. And that thing has a price you don't control. In the early 2000s, oil prices were high. Very high. Over $100 per barrel. Money poured into Venezuela. The government spent heavily. Subsidized food. Cheap fuel. Big social programs. On the surface, it looked like progress. But something quiet was happening underneath. When one sector makes all the money, everything else starts to disappear. Farms shrink. Factories slow down. Local businesses struggle. Why compete when oil pays for everything? This is how an economy slowly forgets how to function. Now here's where the story turns. Around 2014, oil prices fell hard. From over $100 to under $30. That's not a small drop. That's like your salary suddenly shrinking by 70%. And remember, this wasn't just income. This was almost the entire system. Suddenly, Venezuela had a problem. The country still needed to import food, medicine, basic goods. But now, it didn't have enough dollars to pay for them. Because oil is sold globally in dollars. No oil money, no dollars. No dollars, no imports. And no imports means empty shelves. At this point, most countries would cut spending. Painful, but necessary. Venezuela did something else. It kept spending. But now, without the money. So it turned to the simplest tool governments have. It printed more currency. A lot more. Here's the uncomfortable math. If you double the amount of money, but the amount of goods stays the same, each unit of money becomes worth less. Not theoretically. Physically. This is how inflation starts. But in Venezuela, it didn't just start. It exploded. At one point, inflation reached over 130,000% in a single year. Prices didn't rise monthly. They rose daily. Sometimes hourly. Now imagine trying to live inside that system. You get paid. You rush to the store. Because by tomorrow, your money buys less. Saving becomes impossible. Planning becomes pointless. Trust disappears. And when trust disappears, so does the economy. But here's where it gets even more strange. Venezuela still had oil. Still one of the largest reserves in the world. So why not just produce more and fix the problem? Because the system behind the oil was breaking too. Years of underinvestment, mismanagement, and policy mistakes meant production was falling. Even when prices recovered later, Venezuela couldn't fully take advantage. It had the resource, but not the system to use it. This is the irony. The thing that made Venezuela rich also made it fragile. Oil didn't just bring money. It replaced everything else. And when it failed, there was nothing underneath to catch the fall. There's a term for this. The resource curse. When a country becomes so dependent on one resource that it quietly destroys its own economic diversity. It feels like wealth. Until it isn't. And then there's one more layer. Power. When governments earn money from resources instead of taxes, they rely less on people. And when they rely less on people, they often listen less too. Over time, decisions become riskier. Less accountability. More control. And when the system starts cracking, it cracks fast. So now step back. This wasn't just about oil prices. It was about dependence. About building an economy on one moving number, and assuming it would always stay high. Today, Venezuela is still trying to stabilize. Oil still matters. In fact, it still brings in billions every year. But the damage from that collapse isn't something you fix quickly. Because once trust in money breaks, it's not just economics anymore. It's psychology. And here's the uncomfortable question. How many other economies look stable, but are quietly dependent on one thing? One industry, one resource, one system holding everything up. Because Venezuela's story isn't just about oil. It's about what happens when a country builds its future on something it doesn't control. And then one day, that number moves.